Hey guys, this is Bacon Chris here, and today I want to share with you my top 10 favorite episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. And if you hate these episodes, I respect your opinion. Yes, SpongeBob SquarePants is my #1 favorite show of all time, and I love to share with you my favorite episodes. Number 10, Breath of Fresh Squidward. And this is great because I have numbers. Yay! In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick were having a sleepover with Squidward, even though Squidward didn't want to come over. Actually, didn't want them there. And then he gets annoyed at watching the sunset with them. Well, Squidward didn't care about the sunset. He's like, get out! And then he actually put some barbed wire and an electric fence around his house. And then SpongeBob and Patrick wanted to do something fun. So what they actually did, so Squidward decided to put a table on a catapult where they would never see them. And then after putting them on a catapult, Squidward got shocked by the door. And the shock actually made him a really friendly guy. Squidward actually became nice. Alright, I think you need some alone time. We'll be at the petting zoo if you need us. And then Squidward was like, petting zoo? Do they have cute seahorses and scallops that nibble your fingers? Can I come? And then SpongeBob and Patrick were like, yeah! And then they went to the petting zoo, they went to the mall, they went on to the park, and all these other fun things. And yeah. And then when SpongeBob got up in the morning, Squidward actually became his alarm clock, and he was very helpful to SpongeBob, and he said, and they actually went to work together. Usually Squidward hates work, but he actually feels like working. I mean, he kept making Krabby Patties, he kept offering, like, free hats, and all that other stuff. And then somehow, he became Employee of the Month. SpongeBob was upset that he didn't get to be Employee of the Month. And so Patrick decided to have an Employee of the Month party at his house. And then after having the party, SpongeBob was upset that that he never got a chance to do pogo sticking with Patrick. And after that, Squidward decided to go home, and after SpongeBob yelled at him, and then after all, Squidward got shocked again, and SpongeBob and Patrick also got shocked again, and they all became mean people. What I like about this episode is that Squidward's happy. It has a good storyline to it, too. I really hate Squidward, but I love Squidward in this episode because he's nicer to SpongeBob and Patrick. In the next episode, Squidward's nicer to SpongeBob and Patrick and Slide Whistle Fujas. This is actually another hilarious episode. This is a hilarious episode, by the way. Because what SpongeBob and Patrick were doing was playing with slide whistles. And they kept annoying Squidward with every action they do, like making the bed, sipping on tea, and etc. But Squidward got angry. And then what happened was SpongeBob and Patrick kept playing, and they kept chasing Squidward around. And then Squidward was like, how would you feel if I played this? And then he's like, SpongeBob and Patrick were like, wow, you play some music, maestro. And he said, do I? And then what happened was Squidward decided to play with SpongeBob and Patrick. And when they were playing with the whistle, SpongeBob and Patrick kept doing all this silly stuff in public. And then what happened was people in Bikini Bottom were angry because of the whistling they did. And then Squidward was, you know, he went into some type of truck. And then when he fell off of a cliff and then ended up in the hospital. And then the patients started to hear the whistling. Basically, laughter is the best medicine. What I like about this episode is that the whistles that SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward are doing are very hilarious. And yeah, I love the Number 8, Roller Cowards. In this episode, Patrick was showing SpongeBob a commercial about a new roller coaster at this fictional theme park called Glove World, which is a parody of Six Flags and Disney World. Mostly Disney World. And basically, SpongeBob was afraid to ride the roller coaster, while Patrick, you know, wants to ride it, but he does feel scared too. And in this episode, after they got to Glove World, I like the part where they said, "Ticket, please." I don't have my ticket. I think I left it at home. I swallowed my tickets. I guess we're not going to be riding the Fisto Pain today. Hold it there. Here's your ticket. Oh, barnacles. And then what happened was SpongeBob wanted Patrick to take a picture of Patrick with Glovey Glove, which is kind of similar to Mickey Mouse a bit. And basically, after that, they said, "Why don't we go on the little kid rides?" Yeah, and then the Fisto Pain would be much cooler. So they went on this weird roller coaster called the Mitten. And they kind of felt nervous. But then they met Larry the Lobster, who somehow managed to get on the ride. And he says, "You smell that? That's the smell of adrenaline." And then they decided to go get some ice cream. And then after getting ice cream, they said that the announcer said that the park was going to close in 5 minutes. So they finally got on the roller coaster. And when they got on the coaster, they felt really scared and went on this extreme, intense ride. And then at the end, when they got off the ride, they felt brave, like they accomplished something, and then their spines fell off, so they had to get them back. What I like about this episode is that it brings me back to all the theme parks that I've been to so far. And yeah, I wish the Fiery Fist of Pain was actually a real roller coaster. Yeah. Brings me back to Six Flags, Cedar Point, and all the others. Number 7, Club SpongeBob. And in this episode, SpongeBob was making fun of Squidward, saying, "Way, look, it's Squidward. Squidward's going to work." And then, where does he work? At the Woosty Wab? And then Squidward was like, "What are you doing?" And then he said, "You can't come because you're not a member of a club." And yeah, Squidward actually tried to climb into the treehouse. And then when Squidward got into the treehouse, he tried to get down, but then the house went flying over to a kelp forest. where there was like no food, no water, no shelter. And the funniest thing is that Patrick built tombstones for SpongeBob and Patrick, and then Squidward tried to find ways to get out of the forest, and SpongeBob had this magic conch shell, which was like a magic ball. Like when SpongeBob said, "Will I ever get married?" the conch shell would say, "Maybe someday." What? Oh, magic conch shell, what do we have to do to get out of the kelp forest? Nothing. And then Squidward tried cooking up a bug, and I like how he was like twerking in SpongeBob's face. And an airplane had to drop the load, which gave SpongeBob and Patrick a big picnic lunch. And after a big picnic lunch, Squidward was upset that he wasn't allowed to eat because of the magic conch. I like when he said the magic toenail and they take away the food. After all, another survivor came, and then he said, "What do we do to get out of the kelp forest?" Nothing. Well, that's basically what happened in the episode. Basically, SpongeBob and... what I like about this episode is that they were able to have food. There's a lot of funny content in there. I do like the part where Squidward twerks at SpongeBob. And... yeah. And it also reminds me of this novel called Lord of the Flies by William Golding, which was about a couple kids on a deserted island. You know, Ralph, Piggy, and Jack. But Jack was mean. I'll do a top 10 favorite books video one day, and I'll explain to you guys about Lord of the Flies and all the other books that I read. Number 6, the Fry Cook Games. In this episode, Bikini Bottom is hosting an event for people who cook and all the other stuff. SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs were really excited. And Patrick, you know, he got hired to this chum bucket. And what I like about this episode is that they were able to do challenges with each other, like portray food, where SpongeBob portrayed some type of sponge cake with 2 popsicle sticks, a dip of chocolate, and some toasted almonds, while Patrick did a strawberry ice cream cone with a chocolate dip. And yeah, if they were actually real food, that looks delicious. I also like the part where they were jumping over the deep fryer and Patrick made the fishes into fish sticks. I mean, that's cannibalism if fish eat other fish. And then sooner or later, after a couple more challenges, SpongeBob and Patrick went to a wrestling match. And I like the part when SpongeBob erases Patrick's name, and just kept the name Rick, and he's like, "No! My name's not Rick!" And then after fighting, there was underwear that had different colors, and they stopped fighting. Yellow, pink, we do care. And then they started to make up again. That was a really interesting episode. It reminds me of the Olympics. And I like how they were involving foods in the Olympics. And my favorite part was the toasted almonds and the strawberry chocolate ice cream cone. Number 5, Muscle Bob SquarePants. In this episode, SpongeBob is trying to lift weights but it seems like he can't lift weights, so he orders himself a pair of fake muscles and so that he can lift weights better. And SpongeBob was able to do so many tricks with his muscles and showed them to Larry. And I like the part where he used his muscles and said, "Thank you. Anybody up for the juice bar?" And when SpongeBob was trying to get his drink, he was, unable to get it. And so the drink was taken away, so. SpongeBob was up to doing like an anchor challenge where they throw anchors with Sandy Cheeks and Larry the Lobster. And then after doing that, when SpongeBob tried to lift an anchor, the inflatable muscles kept blowing other parts of his body, and then after a while they broke, and I forget what happened at the end. Well, that was a good episode because I like how it was hilarious, for someone to have fake muscles. I wish I could do that, but you can't. Number 4, just one bite. And in this episode, Squidward said he hates Krabby Patties. But SpongeBob kept persuading him, saying, "Try it. You might like it. You won't be sorry." Oh, what's that in your ear? And then SpongeBob kept asking Squidward to try it. He tried it and pretended he loved it when he actually said he hated it. But then when SpongeBob left, he actually loved it and said, "This is delicious." And then after he said it was delicious, he decided to ask for a triple Krabby Supreme, but it was actually for the customer. And then he said, "But you don't like Krabby Patties, Squidward." And then later at night, Squidward snuck to the Krusty Krab and he discovered a patty vault. And in the patty vault, there is a combination lock, and SpongeBob was wondering why Squidward was at the Krusty Krab at like 3 a.m. And he said, "You like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward?" And that was a hilarious face. And then Squidward kept eating so many Krabby Patties. I love the part when he eats the Krabby Patties and it goes into his thighs. His thighs actually look hilarious. It looks like chicken legs. And then he blows up and then gets sent to the hospital. What I liked about this episode is that in the beginning, one guy ordered a deep-fried, double-battered Krabby Patty on a stick and had mayonnaise. It looks like Filet-O-Fish from McDonald's without the bun on a stick. Yeah. I wish I could eat so many Krabby Patties just like Squidward. Number 3. The Sponge Who Could Fly. This is actually a special episode, and they call it the Lost Episode. And in the Lost Episode, Patchy was the pirate who's actually the host of SpongeBob, was watching this episode. SpongeBob wished he could fly just like the jellyfish. And after he tried to have like a flying machine, get a kite, and so much more. But then after putting a hairdryer in his pants, he started flying. And he kept saving people and helping people and all that other stuff. But then after so much help, he was like, nope, get away. And then his pants broke, the jellyfish flew him home, and then SpongeBob and Patrick, you know, had flying pants too. What I really liked about this episode is their music. I love the song called If I Could Fly. And I also like the He's Flying song that goes, he's flying, he's really, really flying. They left, they saw, and now they have liftoff, and now he's flying high in the sky. I love to hang around and see the... But it's off the jellyfish, feels I go. Yeah, I really love the music in this episode. The music is so memorable. And it reminds me of, like, movies like Superman. Yeah. It definitely reminds me of Superman. And I wish I actually could fly. When I was a kid, I wanted to fly too. So, yeah. Moving on to number 2 is Patrick Man. And this is hilarious. In this episode, Patrick decided to become a superhero. And what he did was, basically, he was upset that SpongeBob was wearing a Krusty Krab hat. And then when he stepped on an action figure doll, the action figure doll said, "Fight evil!" And then he said, "I know what I should do." And then he pulled his underwear out of his pants, put a belt on, wore gloves, wore an ice cream cone, and put made a letter P on his belly for peanut butter, and called himself Patrick Man, defender of the Bikini Bottom. And then Patrick, you know, decided to be a superhero, you know, and took things way too far. Like, you know, both beef with Mrs. Puff. She said that a student got trapped in the vehicle and thinks it's a lie. He's like, hey, and one time Mr. Krabs found $1 on the floor. Patrick was like, hey, that's stealing. And yeah, when 2 high school boys were giving high fives, Patrick Man was like, no hitting, and all that other stuff. And yeah, and also when he got to the Krusty Krab, he decided to find out who's underneath mask. He decided to pull people's heads to see who's under the mask. But the customers got really angry. This is similar to what happens in Scooby-Doo. And then, after that, he unmasked a villain named the Dirty Bubble. And he started fighting with him. And then he actually defeated him by pointing at him with his hat. And then he ate the Krabby Patty on the floor, which was kind of disgusting. But it was actually a good episode. And then Patrick said that he was retiring, but then Mr. Krabs was like, nope, you gotta use your superpowers one more time. It is kind of hilarious. It reminds me of all the superhero movies I watched, especially Captain Underpants. Yeah. Patrick is the silliest superhero of all time in this episode. And yeah. And my number 1 favorite episode is Imitation Krabs. In this episode, Plankton disguises himself as Mr. Krabs so that he can steal the Krabby Patty formula. Basically, in this episode, Plankton first disguised himself as $1 million prize giver. And what he decided to do is he got angry over not getting the formula. And basically, he just decided to disguise himself as regular Mr. Krabs. Well, actually not regular, but Plankton built a robot version of Mr. Krabs, and what he actually did was pretended to be his boss, and then he asked for, like, the formula. I like the part when he turns into a toaster. He said to Squidward, "Why don't you get the day off?" But then when the real Mr. Krabs was there, he said, "Gosh, Mr. Krabs, what happened to your skeleton? Metal body. Forget that. We're in the high seas at Squidward." He gave him the day off. Day off! And then the Krusty Krab was smoking. It was probably because of Mr. Krabs' anger. And he's like, yeah. And then the robot Mr. Krabs, you know, which is Plankton, kept asking him for the formula. And what they actually did was they sang the Bikini Bottom national anthem while putting chocolate milk on their head and standing with one foot. And then they did some crazy tricks like, you know, a cannon trick, and then he eats a plate of spaghetti and meatballs. Yum yum, the spaghetti is good. Belch. Meatball, meatball, spaghetti underneath. Ravioli, ravioli, give me the formioli. Yeah. And then SpongeBob later on decided to give the formula to the robot Mr. Krabs because he thought that this Mr. Krabs was actually real. And then SpongeBob decided to have a war game where he finds out who's the real Mr. Krabs by answering questions. And then he accidentally puts the real Mr. Krabs in a seafood dish with French fries and all the other stuff. And then, after that, Mr. Krabs was upset, and then SpongeBob found a 1-cent penny self-destruct kit, and after that, he saved the formula, and then he also saved Mr. Krabs. And that's how the episode ended. It was kind of hilarious how Plankton did a disguise on Mr. Krabs. It was like one of the best disguises that he ever created. And also, another thing that I liked about this episode is ravioli, ravioli, give me the formula, and Mr. Krabs getting angry when he says, day off! And then the Krusty Krab started smoking because of his anger. That wraps off my top 10 favorite episodes of SpongeBob. And if you haven't watched any of these, you should watch them, because they are hilarious. And there's a lot of other episodes of SpongeBob that I like. Right now, SpongeBob hasn't been moving along so much because of Steven Hillenburg's death. I miss you, Steven Hillenburg. Why did this happen to you? Oh. Yeah. So anyways, this wraps up my top 10 favorite episodes of SpongeBob, and this is Bacon Chris signing off. If you have top 10 suggestions, please let me know in the comments below.